What do you think China wants from the relationship with Britain?
No, I think China actually wants to maintain stable relation with all the big countries, or major countries like, UK, because UK is the driver of the first generation of globalization, and the US probably the second, and now China is taking up as a leader, at least in the green globalization. So I think in order to maintain multilateral system, in order to maintain the post, Second World War system not collapse, China and the UK has to work together. So I think in that sense, there's so much China and UK wants to work together. It's no longer China versus the West or West versus China. It's every country is based on their specific interests.
So it's a purely economic relationship, and the geopolitics of each side may be very different.
Well, not necessarily. I think economic is certainly a big driver. Like Starmer said, I'm coming here for the benefit of the UK people now. But then geopolitically, we are facing huge challenges. We see that Donald Trump second term now is really disrupt the world in a big way.
So what does China think of the way Trump is essentially destroying the institutions of the post-war settlement?
I think Trump is doing whatever he thinks is right. He felt the MAGA is really his main objective, because American is spread too far, too thin, too wide for the last so many years. And now it's time to retreat and time to consolidate in the Western Hemisphere. That's why Europe is become a target, actually. Canada become a target, Greenland become a target, and Europe is a target. So in this situation, the world is falling apart. And then biggest economies like G3, China, US, and EU and China, UK and China has to work together to maintain the global order.
Well, but what do you mean by the global order? Does China like the post-war world order?
Absolutely.
Of international institutions of the United Nations?
Of course. China is the signatory, the first signatory of UN Charter, and then China is the strongest defender and supporter of global system, of United Nations. China is the largest donor of UN peacekeeping budget now. China actually is the second largest donor of whole UN budget. And then US is pulling out or maybe delayed payment, like China just recently announced the 500 million support for the WHO. And so China is really willing to work with UK and other countries to support and defend the existing system after Second World War.
But what does China see the purpose of the world order as?
No, I think the Chinese leader, President Xi has mentioned many times, we should have a shared future of mankind. The shared future of mankind is, of course, peace, prosperity, development, and also stick to the UN principle, sovereignty and territorial integrity. So in that sense, we want to see the world as it is continuously. Of course, there's a lot of things that is not perfect. We need to improve, enhance, enlarge.
Because some people see the world as transitioning into an era in which this is a time of strongmen, of Trump, Putin, and President Xi. Is he different to them?
Yeah, no, I would not project like that. I do think that the more old model of democracy versus autocracy is not really valid, that more, because we also have a problem with democracy. We have a populism rising. We have a changing government. We had the people being shot on the street in Western countries. Whereas in China, we have we have one party, but it has a very consistently one 5-year plan, push another one 5-year plan.
But aren't we in an era now where, whether it's Trump, Putin, or Xi, these are regimes which can remove rivals, oppress minorities, and force their way into delivering what they want? Is there really a difference between?
No, I think there's a huge difference. I think what China does is totally different. For example, China has maintained a big, solidarity and very united across the country. In the last 40-some years, China hasn't really started any war anywhere, and still largely a peaceful country. So,
although it might well in the next 2 years. But there are lots of military exercises. There are Chinese flights going into Taiwanese airspace. There was a drone that overflew very recently. So there's clearly a militarized aspect to China's ambition with Taiwan.
I think China will definitely put a posture of deterrence to the separatists, to any foreign intervention. But I think priority for China is still to have a peaceful unification. And then this is a civil war hasn't finished since 1949.
I mean, I'm making a slightly different point, which is in the past, people have criticized China for its internal, human rights and for its external ambitions towards Taiwan. Now everyone's doing the same thing. Trump is trying to take Greenland. He's in. He might maybe getting involved in Iran now. Putin is in Ukraine. So there is no moral high ground anymore. But China is the same, isn't it? China.
No, I think it's different. What President Trump did was totally different. He was, kidnapping a sovereign country leader.
So what do you think is going on right now? Because we saw Mark Carney's speech at Davos talking about, middle-sized countries. Yes. We're seeing a procession now of European leaders coming to China to say, we want to do trade, we want to improve relationships.
No, I think that basically we've seen 2026 is a landmark year of really a new paradigm shift because, there's an old narrative of China versus the West or West versus China is gone, basically.
Do you think that is just about trade, or is it also about trying to uphold the post-war world order?
They are coming to China not just for economic benefit, but also changing the views, compare notes, and how we can all together hold the world together.
But, because some of the China critics believe what you're doing is trying to divide the West by offering trade and economic growth to countries who need it, and you are politically dividing the old alliances.
Instead of China become a rival, US may become a rivalry. Going to invade Greenland and then maybe Denmark.
But in one very important way, China is the rival, and that is in its relationship with Russia for Europe. In that China is supporting effectively Russia's war in Ukraine and helping it with weaponry. That puts China on the wrong side geopolitically.
So China doesn't provide hard weapons or really advanced weapons to Russia. If China did provide that, this war must be won many times over already by Russia. So China is really still stick on the middle line and have us respect sovereignty, but also calls for negotiation and mediation. China is willing to mediate and negotiate.
But if China is so benign to the rest of the world, why is it so developing its military?
China's military budget is only a quarter or maximum a third of what U.S. Still very small.
But it's advancing very rapidly, isn't it? And it has an ambition to match the United States eventually.
They advanced in that because they felt threatened. Because you had the aircraft carrier coming to Taiwan Strait. You had the American surveillance plane coming to the Hainan Island. You don't have a Chinese military floating around Florida or Caribbean or Hawaii.
The assumption in Britain is that China is spying on us. And that there's been big controversy over the new embassy and to what extent it will be a spying base. What do you think of these criticisms?
I found that it was really a fake news because you see because we have such a negative relationship in the past number of years. And for any opposition or party or that working with U.S. or with Western countries, have to find a way to find something on China. Really, for example, they're all bashing on Huawei, saying Huawei has a monitoring device or something. Everybody is getting out of Huawei, like UK did. But so far, we haven't had any smoking gun. We haven't had any hard evidence of Huawei did anything or have a backdoor somewhere. No, nobody can prove that. And same is true for the spy case that UK dropped lately, that calling the spy. But then they find not enough evidence either.
Well, I mean, the group of people in Britain who are the biggest critics of China are this small group of politicians who have been sanctioned. Yes. Some from the last government, but also, some from other political parties. Isn't that very unwise of China to have created these enemies who constantly criticize China?
Yeah.
Why are they sanctioned still?
No, I think things will change. Like China used to sanction Rubio. I mean, now for Mr. Wang, you talked to him on the phone, meet him at meetings as well. Things can change. Let past be let bygone be bygone.
So do you think those sanctions might be lifted?
Well, I would think so. Like in Germany, the Butikoff, the famous Green Party European parliamentary has been lifted. You know, I mean, we hosted the Merrick's, who also have been sanctioned. He came to my office. So I don't think those are really going to be that long.
And then do you think the treatment of Jimmy Lai, who is a British citizen, is also part of this jigsaw? You know, that the improvement of relationships with Britain might also lead to his release.
Yeah. Jimmy Lai is also a Hong Kong citizen. He's a Chinese citizen also. And then if he violated the secure law of Hong Kong or mainland, he was subject to judicial process.
So do you think that's a separate issue, I suppose, is what I'm saying? Or is it something on which improved relations with Britain might also lead
I think it's a
to
separate,
some
I think it's a separate issue because I think the British government and UK people will eventually understand. Let's have a prosperous, stable Hong Kong. It's good for the interest of both UK and China.
And how does China see what's happening in Iran now, with US forces right on the doorstep and threatening?
Yeah, so that's something. It's not China sees. Every country sees that, and all feel uneasy and threatened.
But does China have an opinion on the killing of protesters in Iran? Do you think, or does it say, however you treat your people is up to you? If you want to kill thousands of protesters, that's fine.
No, I don't think killing people is right. No, that certainly is not. China is not endorsing killing anything. China is always calling all the parties calm down, through peaceful dialogue to the discussions. That's always Chinese approach.
But does it even think it's wrong?
I think China would not endorse any killing people. I mean, casualty of the civilians always condemned.
But would it criticize it?
Well, I think China already said, they want to calm down the situation, everybody restrain and constrain and do things. But the problem is that, China doesn't like any country just go in and throw the bombs and attack a sovereign nation without any proper authorization of the Security Council of UN.
When you talk about the world order, it is clear that Donald Trump is withdrawing from many international organizations. He's pulling the US out of UN bodies. Does the world order work if the United States doesn't cooperate with it?
The thing is now, all the rest of countries, also including China, should stand up now to really stand up to support the current system that we all benefit for the last 80 years. We haven't had a third world war because we have this system. Even though it's how imperfect it is, but still, we haven't got a third world war.
The other big shift that has happened over the last 10 years is that in the past, the West would approach China with human rights and democracy as two of the big things that it wanted to talk about. These are things that are now weakened elsewhere in the world. Do you think that's a good thing?
China never said it's perfect. It's always improving. China maintained human rights dialogue with so many countries. But the other things, we should really see the big picture. China has lifted 800 million people out of poverty. There's no extreme poverty in China. There's no populism rising in China. And then also China is you talk about democracy model work well. We see what the chaotic situation, yellow vest and all those populist government searching to the power now, where China keep the consistency and persistency, one 5-year plan after another 5-year plan.
Finally, I mean, Keir Starmer is under a lot of criticism at home for coming here and for approving the embassy, and people say he's kowtowing to the Chinese. What would you say to them about what is the prize that is on offer here?
If a country doing so well, can be a strong partner economically, why should we always seeking problem with them? People realize now, okay, even Western countries have the same system, have so much problem now on their own. So let's not point the finger on China now. It's not China's fault. All those happen in the world is not China's fault now. And China, on the other hand, is a strong supporter of multilateralism. So when US pulling out of WHO, China is donating 500 million to WHO. China is donating another 100 million to Gaza. All right. So in that sense, I mean, we see all the benefit. China also a big, stronger supporter for the WTO. And UK is a country based on the free trade. It's an island nation. You thrive on the global trade. And if that fundamental principle being jeopardized, who is going to support that? Now it's China with UK. So we have to work together.
Henry Wang, thank you very much.
Thank you.